Story 1. They banned running at my elementary school. If you ran during recess, you'd be sitting on the bench for the rest of the break. My friend ran into a teacher accidentally while we were playing tag. She didn't fall or anything, but it was probably a bit of a surprise. This prompted Miss Mean to punish the whole school, so she self-righteously banned running. The next day, Miss Mean met with all the 5th grade classes to justify her decision. She said people only need 1 hour of exercise a week to be healthy. It was ridiculously stupid, and that's not any sort of justification for the decision. The tension in the room was palpable. My 5th grade teacher just sat at his desk, chuckling at the sheer ridiculous nature of the whole thing. The next day, the entire 4th grade and 5th grade sat down by the play structure for the entirety of recess. When they told us to stop sitting together via megaphone, everyone walked around the perimeter of the kickball field and sang songs together. My friends and I made a ton of flyers to bring back running. While we were handing them out before school, the principal grabbed one. We thought we were in huge trouble. It turns out the principal was never told about this ban on running. Mean old lady was taken off yard duty. I don't think she works at my elementary school anymore. Viva la revolution! Story 2. Shaving your head for cancer. To set the scene, I went to a private all-girls school. If you had cancer and lost your hair, I guess they would allow it, but they would make you wear a school-colored bandana or a wig. A girl in our year actually had cancer and lost her hair, and she wore a bandana to school. As a show of support, this alternative girl, think Janice from Mean Girls, decided to shave her head for cancer awareness. The school was all for it. We had a fundraiser and then had the actual shaving of the head at school. She then refused to immediately cover her fleshy bald head and was sent home for the day. She then refused to cover her freshly bald head at all because she said it's nothing to be ashamed of, and that's kind of the point of doing it. She was suspended until she agreed to wear a bandana or a wig. Eventually, she missed so much school that her parents and the school had a big sit-down, and in the end, she agreed to wear a wig. The next day, she turned up in the most ridiculous Florence Henderson wig I have ever seen, and it was awesome. And no one was allowed to ever shave their head for cancer again. Story 3. Bringing your own water bottles. It was only a matter of time until vodka was involved. That was banned at my high school too. I had to go to the doctor's office in the middle of the week. They banned them, and I got him to write a note to them, saying that water bottles were medically necessary for me to have. I was the only one drinking from the water for the better part of a month, until they realized it was stupid. Story 4. Sharpies and permanent markers. Senior year, a group of kids organized a knife fight throughout the school. Basically, the people participating would wear plain white shirts and be split into gangs. Each gang was armed with a different color marker. The goal was to stab people in other gangs as many times as possible. After a couple injuries and a couple people who accidentally wore white that day, the administration got more than a little angry. Story 5. They banned scarves in my high school because apparently the first-year principal got the idea in her head that only gang members wear scarves. The weirdest part was, we lived in an upstate New York town that never had anything close to a gang problem. Long story short, every student protested by wearing scarves the next day. CNN caught wind of it, and my school got national attention for the first and last time. Shortly after that, the principal was fired, scarves were allowed again, and everyone stopped wearing them like usual. Story 6. Holes in jeans were banned. You couldn't even have a fray, even if there wasn't a hole there, in your jeans without getting chewed out by the principal. So kids would put tape over their jeans to cover up the holes. Well, he banned putting tape over your jeans too because it's disruptive. He then banned the girls from wearing tank tops underneath their low-cut shirts. They did this so their cleavage wouldn't show, because apparently a tank top is an undergarment. He also banned chains on jeans, silly bands, and 2 guys were not allowed to go to a dance together, but 2 girls were. Changing the wallpapers on the computers was a no-no. Bouncy balls, bringing your own water bottles, and bringing your own coffee was out of the question. He would take your phone and go through your messages if you were caught using it in class, even if there was an emergency. There's more, but I forgot a lot of them because I graduated a couple years ago. From what I've heard, he's still finding random things to ban to make the lives of high school kids miserable. Story 7. Vending Machines. Senior year, one nondescript day, I noticed the candy machine wasn't completely locked. I thought, oh well, I got my Twix, I'm good to go. A classmate was behind me and took notice that I had fiddled with the door a little and that it wasn't locked. By 9 a.m., the machine was empty. Announcement called all the seniors down to the cafeteria to condemn us for it. In Catholic high school, they knew how to guilt. A couple of my classmates were blamed, the ones with stolen goods in their lockers. The rest of us didn't get to use the vending machines during our free periods the rest of the year. I probably could have snuffed the whole issue out pretty quickly by slamming the door to the machine, but 18-year-old me didn't give a flying F. At graduation, we all threw Hershey miniatures in memorial to the vending we lost. Story 8. In 8th grade, I was part of the first graduating class of a new school in my town. Since it was just starting out, administration was still finding its way. Because of this, as the year passed, they banned glue because of sniffing, Sharpies, also sniffing, and vandalizing. Rubber bands, they were used to fire wasps, little pieces of paper at each other. Tennis balls, chucked them at each other for some reason. Walking across the cafeteria, or switching tables, or even walking clockwise around the cafeteria. They decided you could only walk counterclockwise around it to avoid students bumping into each other. And we had assigned seats. Story 9. Winter jackets. I went to a high school, and those large, puffy Carhartt jackets were a staple of the winter wardrobe. Well, one day, some dude in biology class decided that it would be a good idea to zip his jacket all the way up over his nose, pull his arms inside of it, and smoke a bowl inside his jacket in the back of class. Obviously, everyone could smell it, and he got caught. The administration banned the wearing of any winter jackets in class due to the incident. Usually not a big deal, except that the school population had outgrown our tiny, outdated building, so we had some of those temporary trailer classrooms. Having to sit in one of those during first period in the middle of winter with no jacket after the heat had been turned off all night was a rare form of torture. Thanks, kid. Story 10. Boxing, and I was the reason. This kid and I got into a fight, typical 7th grade thing. In those days, they'd drag you down to the school gym and lace the gloves on you, making you fight in front of the entire school during lunch hour. Anyone was welcome to watch, faculty, students, staff, whoever. So of course it always drew a crowd. The idea was that it would embarrass you both, and that you would stop the fighting. Wrong. I beat this kid so hard 30 plus years ago that I wouldn't be shocked if his grandkids are born with concussions. I'd knock him down and he would get up. Over and over this went on until the hottest chick in the school, who must have been a junior or senior, got between us and made us stop. He was still sitting on his butt trying to look up at me when the coach finally stopped it. Looking back, I can't believe they let kids fight like that. That being said, I regret nothing. Story 11. No capes. I worked at a private school that required uniforms all week, but Friday was casual day. It still had a dress code, but it was very broadly defined. There was this one girl, a 13-year-old goth, who kept coming to school in the most bizarre outfit she could think of, while still staying within the dress code. Everything she came up with for pushing the line would inevitably end up in a revision to the dress code, because she found yet another loophole. Girls would wear skirts of a certain length, so she would come in with fishnet thigh-highs on. Another time it was heavy gothic black makeup. Other times it would be some bizarre hairstyle. Every time I struggled not to laugh. Finally, she came in with a vampire cape her mother sewed for her. Black on the outside, red velvet inside, wide collar. It was awesome. Between classes, she would hold it in front of her on one arm, like Bela Lugosi, as she made her way to her next class. Story 12. In high school, a friend of mine was voluntarily cleaning a closet out for a teacher for extra credit, and decided it would be hilarious to climb into the dropped ceiling, scale across a pipe to the middle of the classroom, pop his head out, and sing the SpiderMan theme song from the 60s. Now, there's a statement in bold in the Student Code of Conduct for Broward County, banning students from climbing in the ceilings. He, to this day, takes pride in that. I did nearly the same exact thing in my ceramics class senior year. I was cleaning the storage room, had the same train of thought, and climbed my merry butt up there. The only difference being my school was built out of spit and hope, and the ceiling collapsed, resulting in like $10 worth of damage, and my friend, who descended into hysteria, throwing his ball of clay against the wall. Story 13. Well, when I was in high school, the administration banned the use of the term gay. Let me back up and say I went to an all-boys school, so the use of that word was insanely rampant. Anyway, there was this kid that everyone hated, and his name was Joe. Once the word gay got banned, we began substituting it with Joe. Instead of saying, "Dude, you're so gay," we would say, "Dude, you're so Joe." Well, after a couple of weeks of this, the administration banned the use of the word Joe, until they realized they effectively stripped the poor kid of his own name. They reversed their decision a couple of days later. That was fun. Story 14. When I was in high school, they stopped serving bags of chips and sodas because of health stuff, but one of the teachers started a secret pseudo-black market where you could buy sodas and chips from her in her classroom, as long as you hid them on your way out and pretended you got them from home. All the profits she made were donated to the school's arts program, so it was actually really benefiting the school. But it got banned, as more and more kids walked out of her room with Cokes and potato chips in their hands. Luckily, she's the type of person who can talk her way out of trouble, so she didn't get fired. Story 15. Long story, but we got MacBooks in year 10, and because of a series of events which I started, we were restricted beyond belief on them. We were actually banned from changing anything on them, even the wallpaper. I tried changing the time because of daylight savings, and it was asking me for an admin password. Edit. Since everyone keeps asking, the school purchased them and we bought them off the school. Even after it was all paid off, the school was still in control of the laptops, and we had to pay at the end of my schooling to get everything off it. What happened was that I may have stolen a teacher's account details and used it to go on whatever website I wanted, torrent as much as I wanted, and so pretty much anything. I still remember them telling me it cost the school $5,000 because me and a few friends were torrenting all day every day, but they didn't want me to pay that. After it got caught, they restricted everything on us. Story 16. At my high school, a kid, we'll call him Mikey, attempted the gallon challenge during lunch. Our cafeteria, however, only sold the dinky half-pint milk cartons, so Mikey buys as many milks as the lunch lady will allow, without getting suspicious, and is given the rest to him by eagerly watching classmates. There he sat, with 16 half-pint milk cartons before him, and he started chugging. This obviously caused a ruckus, as teens were gathering around a single table chanting, "Chug, chug, chug." Teachers got involved and forced him to stop drinking. He was suspended for 3 days. The next day, 2 of Mikey's close friends had made up Free Mikey T-shirts that they flaunted for the whole school and administration to see. The next day, about 30 kids had Free Mikey T-shirts on, and it became a movement, a united affront to the administration. The administration outlawed the Free Mikey T-shirts, and anyone who was caught wearing one was forced to change into their gym clothes or receive detention. Story 17. Milk. This may sound weird, but not totally true. Last year I had an 8th period, end-of-the-day philosophy class, with a relatively emotional teacher who loved the class but got frustrated at how off-topic we got ourselves. This happened almost every day, and one thing she would often do to calm herself was drink tea. Being that she was drinking beverages other than water, I asked if students could do so as well, and she said we could drink anything that wasn't an adult beverage. So naturally, me and my friends decided we would each get a half-gallon of whole milk and keep it in a refrigerator in the cafeteria until class began, and then race to see who could finish it first. Anyone who finished would be dubbed a milkman, in hopes that this would become a school tradition. I won, and finished with time to spare. However, one of my friends almost threw up, and she wound up crying because she couldn't control us, and realized her life was out of her own hands. Nowadays, she has banned speaking of dairy products of any kind in her class, and no milk is allowed out of the cafeteria. Story 18. This is a bit of a story, so stick with me. We were banned from using the bathroom during all school assemblies. This is principally my fault for popularizing the game Hide and Go Poop. For those of you unfamiliar, participants must text all other participants of the game whenever they take a dump. The other players must race around the school trying to locate the stall in which the person is pooping, and tag them by throwing a wet wadded-up paper towel on him over the stall door. Points for tags are accumulated, and if you are not tagged and successfully pooped without being disturbed, you get a point. It gets very competitive. If you have never played, I highly recommend this game to all young men, and ladies of course. At my high school, it started out with a small group of my friends, and over the course of a few weeks spread to almost every male member of my class, well over 100 kids. I developed a technique for surefire success: poop during an all-school assembly. I thought everyone would be too noticeable, all checking their phones, seeing my text, and running out of the amphitheater together. I was wrong. No shame. A group of 100-plus 16-year-old boys tore out of that assembly like it was a summer break, and I was soon pelted by a hefty pile of wet, wadded-up paper towels. Thus, the game was discovered by the administration and discontinued. I mourn its loss to this day. Story 19. At my school, we used to have a particular teacher that would fling open the doors to study rooms to catch us doing whatever teenagers do. Smoking, listening to loud music on hi-fi brought from home, generally just not what we were supposed to do. One day, we unscrewed the door hinges and put it back in place. These were heavy old wooden doors that took 3 of us to maneuver in place. So we crank up some drum and bass, 90s kids remember, and get out of the way in this tiny room all sat in a line so the door won't hit one of us. 2 minutes later, Mr. Thompson starts to fling open the door. It's so heavy, it's basically hinged at the floor now, and as he doesn't realize quick enough, just holds onto the door handle while still shouting. He goes down with the door with a massive crash, taking out the back of a chair that we didn't move, causing more noise and damage. He stands up and goes ballistic, and none of us can breathe. We're all laughing so hard. He's embarrassed, and he storms off, saying he'll be speaking to us later. The following day, we arrive to our long corridor of study rooms to find the doors are all gone. Every single one removed. We get in and are told that if we aren't responsible enough to have doors, we can't have any. Again, we all laugh at the situation so much that this point-proving exercise becomes a real thing, and for 2 more years the doors are left removed. And that's the story of how we got doors banned at our school. Story 20. This will probably get lost, but teachers are banned from speaking out against school committee decisions. When 9/11 happened, our high school was ordered to turn off all TVs, buses were not allowed to play the radio, and teachers and pupils were forbidden to speak about the events that day. My honors history teacher was in Boston that day. When he came back and heard about how 9/11 was being censored, he started berating the decision to his advanced placement history class. He did the same thing to our honors class too. Someone from his first period AP told on him, and he almost got fired by noon. He decided to teach his honors and regular history classes about U.S. involvement in the Middle East for about 2 weeks. He made his AP class do bookwork without saying anything to them. He ended his 2-week silence with a class about the effects of censorship and extreme nationalism. Story 21. SpongeBob. In middle school, several of the buses got to school 20 to 30 minutes early, and those students stayed in the gym until enough teachers were there that they would go to their homeroom. One day, a few black girls brought homemade SpongeBob and other cartoon character blankets because the gym was cold in the morning. They got loud, and a nutjob racist teacher decided the blankets were in gang colors. And by second hour, it was announced that SpongeBob was banned. Starting the next day, anyone wearing SpongeBob clothing would be suspended. By lunch, my grade had decided everyone was buying and wearing nothing but SpongeBob gear. People were painting faces with makeup and printing and posting pictures. Our theory was that they can't suspend the entire 9th grade. By the last class of the day, it had become such an uproar, they announced that the next Friday, Friday before Spirit Week, was going to be SpongeBob Day to kick off the week, and there was a 5-foot plush SpongeBob in the main office window. The principal and the counselor resigned at the end of that semester. Story 1. Tights and stockings at my all-girl prep school. They were a required part of our uniform until the faculty found out about a nifty study habit that was getting pretty popular: writing crib notes on your thigh under the nylons. Then, during tests, you just had to cross your legs, maybe pull up the waistband, and the stocking would stretch just enough so you could see your notes. Story 2. When I was in high school, we got permanent markers banned. Someone organized a game of assassins where everyone is given a target to kill, and if you're successful, you inherit their target. It was $1 to enter, and the winner got the jackpot. We had around 150 students out of the 600 in the school participating. The objective was to mark your target with the Sharpie on their skin, and they were then declared dead. This could only be done in the hallway or the cafeteria, not in class or off campus. Well, our vice principal decided she wanted to participate, saying that if she won the money, she'd use it to buy something for the school. Fair enough, we thought, so we let her in. Well, one of my friends ended up with her as a target, so in between classes one day, he sneaks up behind her and does his best Sam Fisher assassination attempt, grabbing her mouth and slashing her throat with a Sharpie. Well, that was just too much emotional stress for our poor VP. She took his Sharpie, had him serve in-school suspension, and forced us to discontinue the game. No more Sharpies could be used by the students or staff. And no one knows whatever became of the prize money either. We kept it in a jar in our principal's office so no one could take it. So we all hated our VP even more than we did before. Story 3. Drug dogs. They started bringing in drug dogs in my sophomore year. They would smell the lockers and cars, and if one hit on your locker or car, you had to go open them up and let the school search it. By my junior year, a group of stoners had enough of it. They took bong water and put it in a bunch of spray bottles and sprayed it all over the lockers and as many cars as they could. My school had about 1,400 kids in it. It took one time of having 300 plus kids pulled out of class to have the locker searched to make them rethink the policy. What really got the parents to force the school to stop, though, was the cars. When drug dogs hit on a spot, they kind of go nuts. Imagine 25 plus cars getting a hit and having dogs scratch the hell out of the paint for a search that found nothing. There were a lot of parents that didn't push too hard, but some were demanding that the school pay for the damage. So, no more drug dogs. Story 4. The word buckle. I kid you not. Back in grade 7, a few kids in one class had it as a word on a spelling test and thought it would be funny to just shout it out randomly. The teachers, believing it to be a code word for something more sinister, decided to outright ban the word across the school. Needless to say, the faculty became the brunt of many jokes both from students and their parents. Story 5. Two-way hallways. Sounds crazy, right? The principal and his staff thought it would be a smart idea to have one-way hallways in order to cut down student traffic. If your locker was right around the corner and you had to go against the traffic in order to get there, you had to walk all the way around. If you passed your class on the way to your locker, you had to make 2 circles around the building. This significantly increased tardiness and write-ups. Terrible idea. Story 6. It doesn't translate well into English, but gay piles. Basically, if someone was on the ground because they fell or were wrestling with someone or whatever, this was middle school, someone would yell gay pile and everyone nearby would throw themselves in a pile on top of them. It wasn't a problem until some 20 plus kids decided to throw themselves on top of some poor guy. Story 7. Google. Our high school had some kind of contract with this really crappy school-appropriate search engine called NetTrekker. They banned using Google in school because it wasn't scholarly. Only NetTrekker was allowed. They tried extending this to beyond the school. They wanted us to use only NetTrekker for internet searches outside of school and sent home a pamphlet about internet rules outside the classroom. They said that students should not have Android phones. They said that students shouldn't have Android phones. I got a referral for having a Moto X smartphone. This was in 2015. Story 8. Blankets. It was in the South, and they keep the AC on too high because it's so freaking hot outside. Girls would wear shorts to be cool when outside, but they'd get too cold inside. Thus, the blankets to keep their legs warm in class. Of course, blankets are opaque, and they were already being used to cover up legs. Well, if a girl started sharing a blanket with a guy, yeah, things could get a little handsy. Story 9. Candy necklaces at my middle school. One day, a couple of my friends came into the playground before school started with a candy necklace each, which immediately got everyone's attention. After we all demanded to know where they got them and how much they cost, from the corner shop down the street and 10 cents as I recall, 1 or 2 others said they might go and get one for themselves before school started. That might go turned into them sprinting to the shop once one kid figured out how to weaponize them. Holding one piece of candy between their teeth, stretching forward the elastic and biting down, it would catapult pieces of candy at whatever it was aimed at. That morning, a few kids bought a candy necklace each and played a game of firing bits at each other. The next morning, all 400 kids that attended that school were engaged in an all-out necklace war. Every single one of us must have had at least one and our own technique for maximizing the firing rate. After doing our best recreation of trench warfare all morning and having the kind of fun that only comes with an entire playground full of kids all playing the same game, we were all ushered into the assembly hall to be told that candy necklaces were now banned. Nobody lost an eye, just in case you were wondering. Story 10. Pogs and Pokemon cards in elementary school. Pogs because of those metal slammers they were afraid would be used as weapons. Pokemon cards because kids like to show off their first edition Charizards, and thefts and buyer's remorse trades happened often. A lot of people have pointed out that Pogs and Pokemon cards weren't a thing at the same time. That's mostly true, but elementary school for me was K through 6. Pokemon cards came out in January of 1999, which puts me in 6th grade. McDonald's did a big promotion for Power Rangers/VR Troopers that involved Pogs. I remember being psyched about these things, and so were all of my friends. VR Troopers did not come out until 1994, which puts me in 1st grade at the very least. Story 11. Twisters. A weird dude in my class got a lot of laughs by letting people give him titty twisters. Apparently, after repeated and increasingly hard titty twisters, the connective tissue behind his nipple broke, so this guy could literally stretch his nipple 5 to 6 inches off of his chest. Obviously, being a teenager and a weird one at that, he went around showing everyone and their mother his new ability. He got warned about it several times, and the final straw was when he was seen by the administration with an equally weird girl his nipple 5 to 6 inches off his chest. They immediately banned titty twisters. But there was really no need, because we were all pretty scarred by what we had seen from this kid. I cannot believe I'm about to do this, but for those of you asking what this looked like, the best I can describe it would be an upside-down funnel. When he would pull on the nipple, all the loose skin surrounding it would come off of his chest, and a sort of cone-shaped base would comprise the first 3 inches. And the rest did pretty much look like D-nipples. It was probably a decent 3 to 4 inch diameter circle around his nipple of broken connective tissue, so I promise you, it came off his chest a solid 5 to 6 inches. Over 3 sports seasons during 3 years of high school, I can also tell you that it got to that point progressively. He was literally tugging on that nip in the locker room every single day, stretching it out. But hey, who am I to judge? I guess. You could only kind of tell that it was messed up before he would pull on it. So I'm not sure if that would eventually repair itself or just start to sag in the grossest way possible as he gets older. Well, I hope you're happy now, Reddit. I'm going to have PTSD nightmares tonight. Story 12. Any liquid not in a clear plastic bottle. And then the only liquid we could have was water. The ban was because a girl in my grade got caught with vodka in a clear plastic bottle. Everyone in my school never understood the ban because vodka is clear like water, and the only reason the teacher even caught on to her was because another kid was joking around about alcohol, and the with the vodka threw the bottle away in the garbage next to the teacher's desk. We weren't allowed to have water bottles at all. Same reasoning. A teacher took mine once when he saw me filling it at the fountain, saying, "For all I know, you could have vodka in that." As I was filling it, at the water fountain, time-traveling me would go back and say, "Oh, I didn't realize vodka came out of this fountain." But at the time, I was just too dumbfounded to be that clever. Story 13. Toasters. We got in trouble for making toast in a math class because our teacher was notoriously oblivious. Like, we full-on snuck a toaster into the classroom and made toast with jelly and distributed it under the desks 2 class periods in a row. After getting chewed out for being disrespectful, we then designed our class shirts with the "Come and Take It" flag with a toaster in the middle. The head of the school somehow didn't find out about the shirt design until we had them and wore them to school, despite the fact that he was a class sponsor. That is awesome. All the other common areas were taken, so my friend group would hang out at the front of the school. The VP told us we could no longer congregate there as we were a fire hazard. He threatened to write us up if we didn't disperse, even after we told him that in the event of a fire, we would be the first out of the door. This went on for a week until we got black T-shirts and printed Fire Hazard on them. We wore them a lot. He banned shirts that said Fire Hazard on them, so we printed shirts that said Still Not on Fire. He banned amateur printed shirts, so we had them professionally printed by an internet company and kept the receipts with us. Eventually, the ringleaders got called into a meeting where the superintendent told him to stop harassing us. Didn't stop us from harassing him, however. Then came the shirts that said, Do work, Dennis. I do realize that we were a bunch of inflammatory little a-holes. Maybe that's why he was concerned. Actually, my best friend was a pretty decent graphic designer for a 17-year-old. Story 14. Cooking class. Superintendent decided that, I quote verbatim, "Cooking is an impractical art. Today, everyone can just buy pre-made meals and no one has time to cook, or they could be smart and hire a personal chef." This person makes over $150,000 a year after taxes and is in charge of 3 schools in the district, totaling 3,000 students. Story 15. Wearing a white t-shirt in middle school. Lived in an area where there was suburban, rural, and a sprinkle of urban within a 15-mile radius, so everyone got mixed together. Well, a small handful of the rural kids decided White Wednesday was gonna be a thing. You wear a white t-shirt to represent... At first it was a small handful. Then the suburban kids saw a lot of people wearing white, so they did it too, most not knowing why. Before you know it, things got bad quick, so the school said no white t-shirts. I'm completely okay with being proud of your race, heritage, etc. I'm Jamaican, and I rep the culture every chance I get. But being one of the few black kids in the whole school, it got intimidating. Especially kids yelling, "I'ma paint this bus blue and spray the N-word on the side." When you're the only black kid on the bus, it's clear who they're forming against. Story 16. Sack whacking. Guys would hit each other in the balls as a prank, or whatever. Apparently, it was causing a big enough problem that the entire school had to attend an assembly where the deputy principal informed everyone. There has been a large outbreak of sack whacking. Entire school was laughing so hard, even the deputy, who was a really strict and uptight guy, started laughing his butt off. We were also banned from playing with large balls, basketballs, soccer balls, etc., at the same assembly. That was also received very well. Story 17. Shag bands. These plastic rubber bracelet things. Basically, if someone broke your shag band, you supposedly had to have sex with them. A natural law according to some, but never to my knowledge ever enforced. The school got wind of it and became horrified that a bunch of 13-year-olds would ever think something like this was reasonable and came down on us with an iron fist. I vividly remember one teacher scornfully saying, "So-called shag bands," and then spit in disgust. It was hilarious. Story 18. Any type of coin. Seriously. High school, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was a freshman eating lunch, and then heard some screaming and some kid being rushed out of the cafeteria. Turns out, some kid whipped a quarter across the cafeteria, and it flew kind of like a frisbee right into this kid's eye and sliced it, which completely tore it open. The principal talked to us all about it in the auditorium. He had to have surgery, obviously, and I think the victim's family sued the aggressor's family. I still remember I was eating curly fries and a slice of pizza that day. Wrecked. Story 19. Short-selling stocks. Our class was the first to go through new mandatory financial literacy classes, and part of it was a stock market simulation. We began betting against the market when we set it up to crash specific stocks, and each time, our money rose exponentially. We had to fill out paperwork for each trade, which ended up amounting to around 30 pages of trades. At this point, we had trillions. Our teacher was also very condescending about how great she was at the market, so we then bought huge percentages of her stocks and sold them pennies on the dollar to crash her stocks as well. After a while, she checked everyone's progress and found we were trillionaires and went into a rage, even calling the company to see how we had cheated. They said we had short sold, which technically isn't cheating, but she still disqualified us from winning the class game and gave us all Bs. Now, there's a disclaimer before every class that says you'll automatically fail if you short sell. Story 20. Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, and Pokemon cards. Some of the kids at school started trading and selling them during lunchtime. But it got so bad, as the kids were actually selling stolen cards they got from other students. My friend was swirlied one morning for his deck, and later that day he saw a kid with his Dark Magician card. He knew it was his because he had a tendency to chew the ends of his cards. The teachers put a stop to all of it, including playing the card games and bringing them on school grounds. Story 21. Had this little Bible study group that would meet during lunch, once a week. It grew in size really fast, so some of the parents of the kids started bringing homemade lunches to give to the kids that attended. Anyone was accepted to join. They never ran out of food, and it was free, so kids that didn't have money or weren't on the food plan could eat something other than straight junk food. It was stuff like sandwiches and chips, but still better than the crappy cafeteria food. After a while, though, the group grew a little too big, to the point where the school board found out about it and shut down the parents bringing lunches for the attendants because it was lowering the amounts of kids buying from the cafeteria. Ridiculous. After that, they instituted a rule that parents couldn't bring lunches to kids anymore. The overall reasoning was it lowered the cafeteria profits. So if you didn't have money or lunch, you were out of luck. If this was a public school, then that excuse they gave you was just pure BS. I'm on a school board, and at least for my school, the cafeteria doesn't have any profits. Any funds they collect for students who could afford to purchase lunches went right back into the food fund and was returned to ODE, Ohio Department of Education, at regular intervals. More likely than not, they were told that there could be some risk to having a Bible study group on school grounds, and they decided to clamp down on it before they got in trouble. Remember, many school boards are strictly volunteers who may or may not have any legal experience. They'd rather not get sued by a wayward, upset parent when all the board is doing is volunteering their time. Story 22. Pens. I'm not joking. Kids would buy somewhat fancy pens, and then there would be a bunch of trading and commotion. Dude, let me snag that Uniball. I'll give you 2 Pilot G2s. I remember there was a kid that everyone envied because of his Mont Blanc pen. Pretty soon, the school just banned using any outside pens and issued 2 of those crappy Bic round sticks. We were crafty though, and started to replace the ink cartridges with those from our fancier pens. So yeah, it was basically Prohibition, Pen Edition. Story 23. My whole life has led up to this question, and no one will ever see it. When I was in 7th grade, my principal banned flip-flops. My principal also happened to be my dad. When he came over the loudspeaker to announce that we would be banned from wearing them, he proceeded with, "No thongs are to be worn around school because they are a tripping hazard." Apparently, thongs are what they called flip-flops in the 70s. I wanted to die. Story 24. Sweaters with zippers. A new progressive principal found a correlation between those dang hoodlums and zippered sweaters. Obviously, everyone thought she was insane, so we all put tape over our zippers. Took a week to get back to normal. Story 25. Candy canes. Apparently, they were a safety hazard because you could suck on them and sharpen them into a point, which could then theoretically be used to stab somebody. Most of our school suspected that it was simply a way of getting the Ugly Christmas Sweater Club, a group of guys who wore ugly sweaters to school and roamed the hallways handing out candy canes while playing Christmas music, in trouble. It was by far the dumbest thing to ever happen at my school. Story 26. Went to high school in UK, and everything branded wasn't allowed. No trainers, no branded hats, backpacks need to be plain black, only black dress shoes, only Year 11 students, 15 to 16, could wear plain black jumpers under blazers while the rest of us had gray jumpers. But eventually, when we got a new principal, and once they couldn't control people wearing what they wanted, they stopped caring. As to why, I don't really know the exact reason. Nobody told me. It may have to do with the fact that it was an all-boy Catholic school.